Here's why you are feeling lonely if you are in your early to mid 20s. Now, specifically, what I'm going to be talking about in this video is a very common feeling that happens when someone either just graduated college, is a little bit out of college, or maybe you're already sort of feeling this if you're in college or in that age where you feel this transition. I also want to clarify for those of you who have not gone to college or know you won't go to college because of whatever situation, you might also relate to this when you're about to graduate high school. So I don't want to disclude anyone there. But why do you feel lonely? And why is it so hard to feel like you belong in some sort of community at this age? Is because for our entire lives as children, community is all we have. We don't really have as much of an identity. Famously, through our teen years, a lot of us try and develop this identity, maybe rebel against our parents, stuff like that. We want to sort of break away from the group. And I think most of childhood, we're trying to break away from the group because we crave this identity that we see adults have, but without really appreciating the community that we have and that we've always had and that we're taking for granted. No matter what home environment you come from, and I want to acknowledge that not everybody comes from a background of privilege, from a background of parents that love them and stuff like that, and like a positive environment. Whether or not it's positive, it's still a community. Until there is different, child labor laws where people, where children are expected to fend for themselves, which I really don't see happening anytime soon. Community is sort of there. Like, children literally could not survive if it wasn't for somebody helping them financially, emotionally, in lots of ways. We take these communities for granted. Even if we go to public school or we go to school, we have these teachers there, we have friends there. Like, for our entire lives, we have peers that are going through the steps that we also are going through. And what does it even mean to have a peer when you graduate, you're done with school, you're thrown in to the real world? What is a peer? You get to choose those peers. You aren't stuck in this group that you don't want to be in. You get to establish your identity. Now, some of us are lucky enough that we really do feel like we belong in that group that we had through childhood. Some of us are still friends with people from high school or even elementary school. And if that is you, be grateful for that, because not everybody has that. And I think that's tremendous if you are able to make that work. But for a lot of people, as we are off establishing our identity, we realize our identity doesn't really match up with that group, and it becomes hard to force. Some of us, maybe this is why we move away from home, or we get a different career than what our family was in, or we try and do what we can to break away from this group and try and find people, hopefully, that we connect with and belong. So for those of us that do go off to college, college is sort of this time where you do get to establish an identity because your parents aren't really there telling you what to do. It's this sort of middle ground where you have a community and an identity, if that makes sense. You don't have, you're kind of on your own. You are establishing that identity. That is the purpose, really, of college. But you also are surrounded by peers doing the same damn thing. And the only way that you're going to continue having those set of peers as an adult is if you go work at a job that has that sort of culture. And if you look at least American culture, that's not as common. That's not near as common. I would say it's trending that way, where it's more and more likely for employers to try and value the sort of community. But when you enter the real world, community, you're gonna have to find it. Not that it's not there, but you're gonna have to find it. And I think once you've grown up, once you've established an identity, not any group will do, because you have an identity now. You aren't forced into the group. You choose which groups you want to be a part of. Whether that could be a political party, that could be a religious organization, that could be an interest group, or even some sort of counterculture, like someone that listens to indie music or emo music, or like there used to be, I don't know if there's still a thing, but like the scene kids, like that was like a counterculture you could become a part of by identifying as that, and showing that you're a part of that group. And I think one of the reasons why it's harder to find that belonging after college is because we already have an identity. Like I said, not any group will do. We become a lot choosier about what those groups are, and that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing, because it can be very suffocating to have no choice but to be a part of a group. And I think that we don't appreciate how the role of community when we're young, because we so desperately want an identity at that point. It's like, oh, I'm only going to this church because my parents are making me go. Like, this doesn't really feel like a community. But at least for me, like I'm noticing all of the times I had community before that now I don't have as much now, that it's easy to look back and romanticize those things, but you have to remember what it really is that back then you didn't have an identity, so that's why it wasn't great. But only now that we are at this point where I am 24 years old, if you are at a similar stage in life as me, where I have an identity, I know who I am, I know what sorts of people and sorts of groups I want to belong to. So how do I find those people? How do I feel not alone? How do I have a group? And I think a lot of us romanticize high school and college because there are these times in our life where we sort of have this identity. We have enough agency to decide certain things, like maybe you can drive, but at the same time, society doesn't expect you to have your shit together the way that an adult might. You don't have to, like, I mean, in American culture, as of right now, you can stay on your parents' insurance plan until you're 26, like things like that we have in culture where you aren't necessarily expected to go off on your own that way. So for me, something I've been thinking about a lot lately is that I really miss college, and I sort of feel like I didn't appreciate it. But I think that's normal to not appreciate certain things because, at least for me, I'm always thinking about what's coming next, and it can be hard to truly put myself in the moment. But while I was in college, I was so worried about career that I didn't realize how freaking cool it was to be surrounded by peers of people that are at my same specific major, and how freaking cool it was for there to be all these different groups that you could join to support a cause or to have a common interest and things like that just at my disposal that I could have joined, or maybe I did join but I didn't appreciate, things like that. Like there's a choir to join, there's plays you can audition for, there's all these things that once you're an adult, it's harder to do. And why I'm about to answer that is because we are now responsible fully for ourselves. We don't have as much free time because we're trying to stay alive. And I don't think I realized that, as a teen. I didn't realize, like, you might look at your parents and be like, well, why don't they ever hang out with friends? Why don't they have a life? Like, all they do is take care of me and go to work and then come home and sleep or whatever. Like, part of that is being lame and like growing up, but the responsibility of having to keep yourself alive and being the only person responsible for yourself, especially if you are single. And I say single in the sense of not married. Like, I'm not talking about dating a relationship. Like, if you, like, you know, don't share your bank account with somebody else, you know? It's like, that's a lot of pressure that it puts on you mentally and emotionally. And like, for me, I was always a good student, like in college, but if I made a little tiny mistake in college, it didn't really matter, because to me, it wasn't the end of the world if I got an A or a B on a test, in my book. Some people might think it is. But if you make a mistake at work, that is the end of the world, because what if they fire you? You need that job, you know? That's just like a different sort of pressure that even if you aren't aware of it at the time, that pressure can build up, because all of a sudden your security is your responsibility in every single way. And so everything you do is to stay alive. And I think that what happens to a lot of us, I've noticed happening to so many of my friends, is that when we graduate college, it doesn't hit us what we're leaving. We don't really get to fully grieve, like, oh, I don't know if I'm ever really going to be surrounded by that many like-minded people my age at my disposal, just walking down the street, seeing them all the time. I don't know if I'm going to feel that again. And even if you do have that, even if all of you guys from college still live in the same town, it won't be the same, because you have different priorities and different responsibilities. And it is possible to have a work-life balance, but fun never gets to be your top priority ever again, even if it is a priority. Like, staying alive becomes the top priority because you don't have that covered necessarily. So there's some good and bad things with this change that I want to discuss. I have been talking about this to so many friends recently that I just sort of hoped that maybe some of you guys listening would resonate with this, or get some value overthinking about this, because I did not fully mourn college, because I didn't know what I was leaving, and I didn't really know what I had when I had it. And now that it's been 2.5 years out, I think that I naively assumed that I would still be able to maintain the same amount of friendships as I always had. And you guys know me, if you watch my channel, you know that I'm an extrovert, and I very much value friends. I very much value group hangouts, one-on-one. I want to know what everyone's doing. I want to bring people together. That's what really gets me going more than anything. And so whenever I would see the pattern that adults did this less often, I thought maybe it was a generational reason, or maybe just a personality reason. I'm like, well, being old doesn't mean that I'm not going to value these things, that I'm not going to want to go out, that I'm not going to want to have fun, that I'm not going to want to have groups of friends, like have people over. Like, I love having people over. I love entertaining groups. Like, I really do. And in college, I loved having parties. Like, I would have house parties with just, you know, my closest friends, like in my major. Like, I would never do anything crazy, but I loved that experience of like mingling and feeling like I'm a part of a group. And the school I went to, the journalism school, was pretty big. And so pretty big in the sense compared to the other schools in the college, but small enough. There was about 2,000 people that graduated with me in journalism, and we all sort of knew each other. And it was large enough where you couldn't really know everyone, but you still really felt like you were a part of a group. That is, unless your identity didn't match that group, which is a whole other thing, which that's very true. There are a lot of people who are in groups that don't really match their identity, and that's when the group feels suffocating. Groups aren't suffocating if your identity matches the group that you're in. I think it takes self-awareness of your identity to know what group you even are supposed to be in or want to be in. So, yeah, but I think I was naive in thinking that I would have the energy to invest in friends the way I always have, put friends first the way I always have. But what happens is, as I'm trying to establish my career, I have to make choices. I have to figure out how to stay alive. And I feel like I'm on this journey right now where I have no choice but to build, because I have big dreams. I have a life for myself that I want to have. And that's not just going to make itself. And friends are great, but it's not useful for me right now. And I hate that. I hate that. Because as you know, I'm an ENFJ. I'm an extroverted, feeling dominant. I crave people. That is like my drug right now that I'm trying to let go of so that I can actually be happy. Because just because something's your dominant function doesn't mean that it's always going to make you happy in every circumstance. But it is the thing that you want to sort of see. I'm trying to build my life to be a person that has the energy and is part of multiple groups. But just the fact that you are now responsible for yourself in a way that you never were before puts so much added pressure on you that you might not even know that you have. And that's what makes it harder to invest in friendships. If you are in your early 20s to mid 20s, or even if you're experiencing this transition at a little earlier age, you can't invest in friendships the way you did because you don't have as much to give. It's like the hierarchy of needs. The most important thing is your security. And what happens is that rug is ripped from beneath you. You all of a sudden are putting your energy there, or you used to not have to put your energy there. You don't have as much energy to give. And you have to have your cup full before you can give. And all of a sudden you have less to give. And that's what happens when everyone graduates college. Anyone that's in college, when you graduate, you all of a sudden have less to give. What happened to me when I graduated is I didn't notice this. I thought that people just didn't like me anymore, because what I was doing is I was still putting my energy into friends and people when I should have been putting it into me and my growth and building. I was still trying to have these friends with me because for me, friends, people, that's my fuel. I don't really know how to just go on and keep going without that. I took it personally whenever people were building and heads down and like trying to live their lives. I took it personally when people would take forever to respond, when they would bail on plans. But now I'm starting to realize the more I talk to people, like it's been 2.5 years since I have lived and worked in this city. And my friend group is different than what it was in college. But the rules no longer apply where if someone doesn't text you for 3 months doesn't mean that they've forgotten about you. Because in college, people hang out every single day and like they're always doing stuff. And so it doesn't mean that they're hanging out with other people that aren't you. You can't take those things personally when we have to realize this is this like epidemic. Like this is not a you thing. And when you start to make, that's what I think is interesting when we look at social generalized things from like this high level view. Obviously you can't apply it to every single person, but if you realize that these things are epidemics, then you don't personalize them as much. You don't think like someone not texting you back for a while or like someone bailing on plans. You don't assign personal meaning to it like, oh, that means they hate me, because you realize that they're going through the same thing that you're going through, the same thing that other person's going through, is that we all are heads down building our lives. And, you know, community, I think, is more important now than ever, because this is a very hard transition for us. But the problem is that community is not as much embedded in the culture of right now. If you feel like you do have community, I'm happy for you and you should be grateful. Some of you that might be in like sororities and fraternities from a state school or another situation where a lot of you guys still have the same friends in the same city, then you might not have this problem. But even so, when the rug is pulled from you and you have responsibility, everyone has less energy to give and everyone feels more alone. And so if you're listening to this and you feel more alone, you feel forgotten by your friends, you feel like you're the one that's trying to reach out to people and they aren't getting back to you, I want you to know that it's normal and you're not the only one who has felt this way. And I still feel this way. And I'm grappling with it right now, which is why I'm talking about it. And all of my close friends feel this way. I have a lot of close friends that live in different cities now, and we try and reconnect. And it's like we have a hard time getting back to each other because we're trying to make close bonds and find a community in the city that we're at. But also, it's like that takes investment, and then it also takes investment to reconnect with your true like soul friends. So that's a very hard transition for everyone. I just ask that we try and be patient with one another when we're going through this process and realize that this is the transformation process of building a stable foundation in your life. If you look at the hierarchy of needs, like that stability, but make it completely your own and not somebody else's. You are no longer in somebody else's house. You're no longer standing on somebody else's foundation that they built. This is the time for us to build that foundation. And it's a wonderful time. It's a beautiful time. And the reason I started on YouTube is because I want to document this time, because I think that a lot of people feel lost at this time. And I wanted you guys to see how lost I have felt and feel, because I trust that I'm going to get out of it. And I trust that you are going to get out of it, because I know that this is just another part of the story of my life. And this is another part of living, is that now is the time for us to build this foundation. And there's going to be community again, but this time you're going to have to choose to be a part of it. And so it's never again in your life going to happen where you just magically have lots of people around you and like lots of peers that you could use to feel like you fit in. You're going to have to self-select into groups. And there are groups in cities. There are community choirs you can join. There are events. There are networking events. There are churches you could join. There are political movements that you can join. There are charities that you can volunteer for. There's literally so much that you could do. But now you are going to have the balls, and you're going to have to be brave to put yourself out there and go to those things. But what you're also going to have to do is know what your identity is and be honest with yourself and know, what groups do I want to be a part of? Because it's not going to be fulfilling anymore if you're just there. Like, you got to actually know which group you want to be a part of to even put yourself out there into joining them. Maybe a book club might work for you. Or, if you go to like meetups.com, they have lots of things on there. And something that I've done is even on Facebook, if you search your city's name, in the groups portion, there might be some grassroots groups. I mean, I started a group like just for young professional women to get together and do a happy hour. I started like a Facebook group for that. And, there might be some people out there that feel the lack of community that are trying to do something about it by starting those communities. And, you guys that watch my videos a lot, if you know about personality type, you know that not every personality really is interested in building communities, and that is okay. You deserve to be in one, and you deserve to feel like you belong, whether or not you're an ENFJ like me that is interested in building communities, or whether or not you just want to be a part of one. And some of us are better at building communities and having the bravery to create them and go to one than they are knowing themselves and their identity and knowing what communities fit them and which ones don't. And so if you are like one of those people, maybe you're an INTP or an INFP, and you know who you are and you have trouble finding groups that you belong to, that's just because you are discerning enough to know where you belong. And if you don't see a place where you belong, you might have to get out of your comfort zone a little bit. And I just wanted to also validate for any of you introverts listening to this that extroverts also have this problem of reaching out to people when we are in this stage. And I think extroverts, we're used to having a pretty full cup of being able to reach out and do and give and all this stuff. We're just used to being energized by those things. And it doesn't happen in the same way when we don't have as much energy in general. And so rest assured that even extroverts have this problem, even ENFJs, even people that are apparently the masters of social situations, as some could say, even ENFJs have this problem. In fact, it's my ENFP and ENFJ friends that I talk to that feel the most lonely and bent out of shape in this transition, because we're extroverts. We're used to having friends. Like, what the hell? Where did they go? Sort of how it feels. And if you're an ENFJ or an ENFP watching this, I don't want you to feel like if you're in this spot that you're all of a sudden lame or that you're not fun like you used to be or anything like that, because that's just part of the growing up process. And it's just part of establishing your identity. So, yeah. Hopefully this video was helpful and answered or helped you guys think through some things. I believe in you. I believe that every single person deserves to belong. And I also believe that every single person deserves to be in a group that feels right for them. I don't want people to have to make the decision between belonging to a group and also feeling like they're being authentic and honest with themselves. Because being a part of a group just for a group's sake can be sort of a security blanket. But then not being in a group at all in sake of your identity can also be a security blanket. But we're all in different phases of our journey, and if we are clinging to one of those security blankets over another, that is completely fine. And knowing your personality type can help you understand that and help you understand this is just my starting point. It's not your end point. Your personality type is where you have started, what feels comfortable for you, but it doesn't describe your potential. It describes your comfort zone, and you have to get out of your comfort zone to ever really like meet these high visions or to ever be anyone great. It requires being out of your comfort zone. Not everyone that goes out of their comfort zone will seek the outcome that they are seeking, but everyone who has ever done something great or done something big has done it by being out of their comfort zone. It reminds me of not everyone who works hard will reach success, but everyone who is successful has worked hard. It's that sort of dynamic where it's like you literally have nothing to lose. It might feel like, well, I don't want to invest if I don't know if it's going to be worth my time. But you have to realize that putting yourself out of your comfort zone, finding a community, working hard, being heads down, and building the person that you want to be. Everyone, like, that is required for greatness. If that's what you're achieving. There's no other option. Like, it's one of those things where we are confronted with a choice. We get to decide, what sort of person do I want to be? And you also have to be okay with the outcome of not being great, not being successful, whatever those things mean to you. Those are subjective. You get to decide what that means to you. Your own metrics of success. But it's sort of like this point of no return where you shouldn't be doing these things because you think it's going to ensure greatness. It's not going to ensure that you're getting to where you want to go. It's not inevitable. You have to be okay with going down this path and know that it might not work out, but I know that if I did nothing, it will for sure not work out. And so I have to do, like, doing something is my best option. Even if I fall flat on my face, I'm at least having a way higher percentage of things working out. So hopefully this was helpful. I'm sorry if you feel lonely. If you'd like to work with me one-on-one, talk through some of these things, or if you feel like you're in a place where you have to forge your own path, like, I have links below for contacting me about coaching and stuff like that. And also, if you're interested in personality types, you can join my Facebook group, Personality Typology for Self-Growth. Thank you for watching this video, and have a wonderful rest of your day.